Polyester is a wonderful material, right? Performance features are one thing, environmental risk and biological risk is another. It never really goes away. It breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces that become what we now call microplastics or nanoplastics. Those plastics then, enter into the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat.
Liedtke, ex-Adidas executive who launched Yeezy with Kanye, now leads in Less Collective, world's first plastic-free streetwear brand. Featured on Netflix's By Now, he's redefining fashion through sustainability and bold innovation.
Recent data is now telling us that we're ingesting micro and nanoplastics up to a credit card a week. You could have up to a plastic spoon, one of those single-use spoons of plastic in your brain.
Wow.
The fashion industry has tried to self-regulate. So the biggest way to reduce your emissions is, so anytime you wear something that stretches, it's basically a melted plastic, right? So think Lululemon.
I love Lulu, damn. What's like the biggest myth you've encountered about quote unquote sustainable fashion?
I think the biggest myth is,
Very well. So great to see you and so great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
you bet, happy to be here. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for being interested.
Of course, I love your work so much. And are you in NY right now?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Honestly, I'm just so glad I discovered you through Buy Now. Must watch for everyone listening. Just like it was a massive eye opener, and it just came to show how unconscious all of us really are and how deeply brainwashed we've all been by consumerism. And what you're doing now to revolutionize the fashion space is, of course, beyond admirable. I mean, you've been on this incredible journey of, spending a quarter of your life at Adidas to now, launching your own venture, Unless Collective. So I guess the question is, what was that defining point that made you transition from, leading this global giant of a brand to building something of your own?
Yeah, I think the critical thing is understanding the impact you have, and understanding the impact your industry has, and understanding, the basics of where product goes when you're done using it, if you will. So everybody in the industry knows that we're reliant on petrochemicals. We're reliant on petroleum as a feedstock,
Yes.
which just means the basis of most of what we create. In fast fashion, it's even worse. It's like in general, fashion industry is, I think, 70% consisting of petroleum-based feedstocks or materials.
Yes.
And I'd say that's pretty accurate for sports companies as well. So if you're talking about Adidas or Nike or New Balance or Puma or any of these brands, they are reliant on petroleum-based fabrics more than most because of wicking componentries from wicking moisture, moisture repellent. All these different things require certain materials that are primarily most effectively made from petroleum.
Right.
And as you become more aware of that, it's hard to whisper yourself to sleep, after that. So, you can do what
Yeah,
you can when you're inside the building. You can
I can
try
imagine.
to eliminate your plastic footprint through plastic bottles and shopping bags and beauty care products and things like that. And you can really reduce your footprint. But ultimately, the biggest impact you have is on the materials you use and where you make the product. And so if you just do a carbon analysis of impact on the world from a product standpoint, from a fashion standpoint, from a company standpoint, the biggest areas of improvement are the materials you use to create the product, and the shipping of the product from location of manufacturing to consumer destination. So I went right at the material side and started
Yeah, I
to
want to
work.
pick up on that, in fact, because that's so key. Because you mentioned that 70% of what we wear is polyester or petroleum based. So to those who doesn't mean very much at all, like what is that? Like how would you educate them on the harms of polyester? Like what does that mean to people?
Yeah, so polyester is a wonderful material, right? So it's created from oil, and so the oil is extracted from the ground and then is spun into fibers, usable fibers that can then create all sorts of wonderful things like sofa, like cushions, like fabrics, like carpets, like blinds, and my specialty is apparel and footwear, and the majority of the materials that we use are polyester based because of their performance features. Performance features are one thing. Environmental risk and biological risk is another thing. So as we look at the impact of plastics, this it's an unbelievable material. As I said, I like to refer to it as a forever material, which means it never really goes away. So even when you're done with it and you drop it in the recycling bin or drop it in the trash, it doesn't go away. It actually stays around for hundreds or thousands of years based upon the material composition.
That's
So what I
nuts.
mean by that is it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces that become what we now call microplastics or nanoplastics. Those plastics then, enter into the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. And recent data is now telling us that we're ingesting micro and nanoplastics up to a credit card a week, in the air,
Yeah.
whether it's breathing or drinking or eating. So now that microplastics in our bodies, some of it is expelled through natural biological rhythms, but some of it is embedded. And so you're finding it now in our arteries, in our veins, in our brains. Recent study came out this week where, based upon, again, your diet and your exposure to this, you could have up to a plastic spoon, one of those single-use spoons of plastic in your brain. Now,
Wow.
research is early, but it's proving to be an indicator of early onset dementia, which is not something you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. It's also in our arteries, as I said earlier. Some research out of Italy earlier last year came out and said you're much more prone to have fatality from a heart attack or heart disease if you have plastic buildup that's leading to plaque buildup in your arteries. You've got plastic buildup in men's testicles. You've got plastic buildup in in the placenta. So it builds up very quickly in different parts of your bodies based upon, the ingestion rate we're having. So again, research is early, but once you start to hear these things as a fashion executive, you can't unhear them. You can't unsee them. So for me, the inflection point was understanding this a little bit more. Like I'm trying to bring you on this journey with your listeners, and really then trying to say, okay, what am I going to do about it? And that's when I had the inflection point to leave Adidas and move to a startup world and start my own company, which would be the world's first 100% plant-based fashion brand called Unless.
Wow. More power to you. But honestly, hearing all this, I'm just like, ignorance is not bliss. It's just crazy. Like how unconscious we are. It's insane. And in the name of capitalism and consumerism, it's a shit show, to be honest. It's just like really bad. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think there's people that can look at the glass half empty, and I think you definitely see that when you watch the movie Buy Now. It's definitely an eye opener of how we're all wrapped up in consumerism and kind of addicted to the cycle of consumerism. I think where I end on the movie, and this is the same place I come to in life. It's like people like us have to put their foot in the ground and make a difference. And the difference I'm trying to make is I can give you a cleaner way to buy product. I'm not asking you not to buy product. I'm not asking you to change your lifestyle and the need for new things, because I think that's an embedded cultural behavior in all of us. But I am saying I have planned for the end of life of my product, so that my product, when it goes into the world and you use it until you're done using it and you want to get rid of it, it will harmlessly go away and will create nutrient rich soil and plant and worm food, versus becoming destructive little microplastics.
Well, the silver linings from this is that there's a lot more awareness coming onto the surface. Like there's a whole episode I watched on DOAC, Diary of a CEO, where he featured this woman, she's called a toxinologist. She talks about toxins everywhere, like plastics and this, and what we drink, what we eat, what we wear. There's no end. I was just like, that's very enlightening. So I get what you're talking about. So at Unless Collective, you guys focus on regenerative fashion, right? So what would
Yep.
that mean for someone if you just break it down in simple terms?
Yeah. So in simple terms, so starting up higher, it's like when people say they're sustainable, I get doubtful. So, and it's
Ah.
because sustainable is such a big, broad brush. Oh, we're sustainable. Oh, really? Tell me how. Tell me how. Tell me how. When you get into it, it's like, oh, we use recycled polyester, or oh, we have we have this solution of 50% plant based, or it's something very vague and not really clean. So we wanted to get away from this term of sustainability, because when you say it, it's the first indication to me that you're not. It's kind of like what people refer to as greenwashing, or even green wishing, where people think they're doing the right thing, but they're really not. So we wanted to get away from that and create like a new territory. So this word regenerative is a really powerful word, because by its definition, when you're regenerative, every step in the cycle adds value instead of takes away value. So typically when you make a good, when you make a product, you are extracting resources and then diluting those resources into some sort of product that then ultimately has no end of life, has no useful end when you're done. So you're always extracting resources from the circle of life, if you will. So you use it, the battery wears out, it gets more broken, the screen breaks, whatever. Now it's deteriorating, and then when you're done with it, you put it in the trash can. And I'm telling you right now, there's no way. It may go away from your house, it may go away from you, but it doesn't go away from the earth. So now it sits in a landfill, or it sits in some more deceptively, vague place of disposal, and it just sits there for, again, hundreds or thousands of years based upon the material. What regenerative means is every step actually adds value. So what I say, so we start from plants and minerals. We then create a beautiful garment. So we generate something that then's made to degenerate. So when you're done with it, it will go harmlessly away back to natural materials, because that's what it came from. That then you can regenerate back into new products. So it's a holistic circle that it comes from the soil, goes back to the soil without deteriorating or causing chemical poisons or some sort of harmful waste to end of life. So our whole thesis was zero harmful waste to end of life. It doesn't mean it doesn't have waste, because it does, but it becomes ingredients for nutrient-rich soil. And all of our product is chemically tested at end of life, so that we make sure that it is harmless, and that it is a place for good, healthy biology within the soil that it creates. And so we grow fresh stuff. So we're actually doing that right now. We are taking some of our early product and some of our early factory scraps back to earth now and growing fresh cotton plants out of it. So we're completing the whole thing. So regenerative means you generate something, it degenerates, and it regenerates, and it's constant cycle of life, just like the world is made to be, just like a tree in your backyard.
Beautiful. So what's the average life cycle of these products?
As long as anything that you can buy anywhere else. If you think about it, the advent of petroleum-based product has really only happened in the last generation or two of our lives. So it's like we used to make things out of natural materials. Think about your grandparents and how they dressed versus how we dress today. It's like the wools, the cottons, the bamboos, the silks, all these things were natural materials coming from natural places. Only with the really, I guess, World War II initiated the entire move to plastics and polyesters, and that whole the 50s and even into the 60s, where it just became ubiquitous. But that's basically in my lifetime ish. I was a late 60s child, so it's really only happened the last 60 years of where we've really seen this acceleration. And now, and that's what's happening, is you're seeing the last 10 years, it just keeps going more and more quickly into a plastic-based world, because it's so cheap and it's so efficient, because it can be drilled out of the ground in the form of oil. So really, you're just going back to those natural materials and unlearning the polyester thing and getting back to it. So we're making product that lasts as long as you want. You can wash it, you can dry it, you can beat it up, you can do whatever you want with it, and it's going to hold up as good as anything. In fact, it's going to wear into your body like natural materials do.
Wow, that sounds very enticing.
Repelling. But then when you're done with it, you can naturally let it go. You can put it in your yard. You can grow tomato and roses if you want.
I love it. So what you're doing now, what progress have you witnessed in shifting consumer habits? Because how have you incentivized people to switch from their traditional choices to more renewable fashion?
Yeah, I think as a startup, it's difficult, because you have to allocate your funds in a very deliberate way. So the first thing was the research and development cycle, where you're allocating your money so that you can understand the innovations that are out there and build against them, because it's hard, right? We also found it in the middle of COVID, so factories were full because everyone was sitting at home shopping from home. So no factories really wanted our business. So we had to really find the different places that we could work with, and then teach them a new way to make the product, which was super interesting. So a lot of your money goes into that, and then when you have this product set built up, and we've now built a shoe, we built socks, we built wovens, we built knits, We've built outerwear. We've built insulated wear. We've solved for a lot of issues that we found, like, from insulation and how do you stay warm and how do you do closures without zippers. This is not one of our pieces, but with buttons and things. And I think that's a really important. Those are really important learnings for us to do and to make. The money, though, runs out pretty quickly. So you get all the research and development, you get all the product built, and then you're like, oh my gosh, now I need to go tell people about it. Now I need to distribute this. And that's where it's like, okay, in our model, we always built into the equation of how we can scale by partnering with some of the incumbent brands that need a better story for their consumers to trust them. So we started talking to some of the bigger brands in our space, and I'm happy to say that Under Armour has partnered with us, and actually they've acquired us in the last 6 months, so that we can start to drive a proposition of material revolution within the Under Armour company, but still being a standalone brand. So as we do that, then we're now just launched our brand in Europe at Paris Fashion Week earlier this year. So now we're starting to spread out and really get ourselves into different markets that are more compelling, and we're scaling up distribution as well. So we're going to be in Europe in the next couple of months, doing different activations that kind of bring us to bear, and working with different distribution partners to make sure we can satisfy consumer demand. Because it's my belief, and this podcast is testament, that people are interested. People want to know more. People want to buy into a better solution. They just don't know about it. And there's so much noise out there of like sustainability and, again, green wishing, if not greenwashing, that we need to be careful of, how they're selecting it. But now we've got a little more capital in our bank. So now we'll start to build up this audience and this fellowship. So to answer your question, the receptivity has been really good when we can talk to people, but it's really having the capital to deploy to really be able to reach more people, which our partnership now with Under Armour will allow us to do that.
Fair enough. That's great stuff. Like, that's really, really good stuff what you guys are doing and what you guys have achieved in pretty short span of time. But would you agree that this space is still like fairly niche?
Oh, always. I mean, I think you have to, any new innovation is going to be niche to begin with. I think sustainability is something that we've modeled in fashion, similar to plant-based proteins, if you will. If you look at the growth of that over the last 15 years, it's been crazy, right? So, first it started with like little laboratory-grown cells and things, and then you started to have things like Impossible Burger and plant-based meats come out, and Oatly, like oat-based milks, and now that's taken such a large portion of market share because they've gotten the taste right, they've gotten the flavor right. And now they're distributing it and scaling it really large. So I take some learnings from that comp model. I also look to electric vehicles and an adaptation of electric vehicles in different markets. Like before Tesla came along, really you didn't really have a viable electric vehicle model. You could drive a smart car, but then you really are compromising the quality and the speed and the aesthetics for your values. And what we firmly believe by looking at these two models is you can't ask consumers to compromise their values for their tastes or their tastes for their values. So what I mean by that is we have to meet them where the consumers are. I have to make product that's as good as anything they can buy from any of the competitors without any compromise at the same basic unit economics, at the same costs, so then they can say, yes, I choose this option because it's better for the world and it doesn't compromise my taste, it doesn't compromise my quality, it doesn't compromise my pocketbook from a cost standpoint. That's the goal. We're not quite there yet, but I will say that if you look at our website, I would argue that the quality of our product, the quality of of your taste is going to be met at a very high level. Unit economics are not there yet, but I typically try to give ourselves 3 to 5 years of new innovations getting to unit economics, because unit economics all comes down into volumes. So as we scale our volumes from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of units, then we're going to scale that at a point that's going to be competitive with the incumbent offers and give us the same pricing.
Fair enough.
So
like
it
money
is
capital
niche
is
to
one
begin with
aspect.
right now, but it's not niche forever. So sorry. So come.
No, I was just saying like money capital is one thing, but also a massive aspect of this is changing habits. Like how do you actually make renewable fashion sexy, right? Like how will you ever replace or match up to the high street or the high end brands of the world, like your Chanel's, your Zara's? Gucci and stuff, because people are obsessed with looking, great for the gram, and it's about making this space sexy, right?
It absolutely is. And so we've worked with our current material set and the stuff that we could find ourselves, like I told, like with K-Puck insulation or nuts for buttons and things. We've worked within our material sets of knits and wovens. The things we haven't been able to innovate against, and this is where the partnership with Under Armour comes in, is stretch. So anytime you wear something that stretches, it's basically a melted plastic,
Or
right? So
polyester, yeah.
think Lululemon, Lulu,
Oh,
Aloe,
I love Lulu, damn.
Yori, all these brands, they all have this really stretch component, which means they're basically 100% polyester and shedding stuff into your lungs. But we need to innovate for that, and we are with Under Armour's R&D behind us. We can do that. We need to solve for glues, right? So when you solve for glues, then you can glue shoes together versus having to do triple stretch where you have to triple stitching where you have to like really use how you bind things together differently. We have to solve for foams. So think about midsoles that come under your product from a footwear standpoint, specifically in sports. They're all polyurethane based. We have to solve for prints and dyes. Those are kind of the five, what I call the horsemen. So foams, stretch, glues, prints, and dyes. Those things are very difficult to find plant-based solutions for today. We have to invent those. We are inventing those now at Under Armour, and we're excited about doing that for Under Armour and for Unless. But we couldn't have done that as a startup. So now you see where the marriage comes in. So if we're going to win the future of the runways, we need to make sure the material set, including those five things I just mentioned, are at the same level as the material set that the current Chanel's, Gucci's, Louis Vuittons, and et cetera are working off of. So once we get there, then we're eye level. Then there's nothing to stop us from doing anything for any fashion designer they want. But I would also say that fashion designers like Stella McCartney and others are pioneers in the sustainability movement, in the vegan movement. So I do think there is a lot to build on there. They just need a better material set, which we hope to bring them, and they need better brands like ours that they can then collaborate and learn from. And so I do believe designers are the future of fixing this. I think designers and engineers are two of the most critical experts to have on
Yeah, they're
page.
gonna take lead all the way.
Exactly. But you have to really define the problem, right? And be very clear about the problem you're trying to fix. I'm very focused on fixing the problem of harmful waste at end of life, which means getting rid of nanoplastics, getting rid of microplastics. Stella McCartney's always been very clear about, I'm solving for veganism, which is great, but that leads her right down the plastic route, because if it's not animal, it's got to be plastic. I'm going right between the two. I'm saying we're vegan as Unless, we're a vegan brand, but we're also zero harmful waste. So it's a very limited set. So as I can pioneer that set, then I can say, okay, now we have both worlds. I can bring you in, Stella, from the vegan standpoint. I can bring all the anti-plastic people in for that standpoint. And I can say that's the perfect solution, the perfect toolbox. And that's why Unless is such a pioneering brand, to bring those offers to life.
Very reassuring stuff. Wow. But overall, like, why do you think people don't take the subject seriously enough? And what would it take to create the sense of urgency?
I think they do take it serious. I honestly don't think they know how, and I don't think they're being offered the right selections. And I do think there's a lot of noise out there. So what I mean by that is, all indications are, if you meet them where they are, again, from the plant-based proteins with, like, say, oat milk. Oat milk is unbelievably successful now, to the fact where it's causing great pain, at least in the States, for the dairy farmers, because
Yeah.
it's no longer something you have to choke back. It's no longer something that doesn't taste good. It's now just as good and gives, makes my cappuccino just delicious in the afternoon, where, I don't need to go to a dairy farm that ethically I might be at odds with. So I have that option from a taste, from a quality, and it meets my values. If I look at electric vehicles, the same thing. Instead of driving a smart car and wearing my values on my forehead, like, here, I now drive a Tesla or a Rivian that is the most luxurious of the luxury. It goes as fast as anything on the Autobahn, and it provides me the aesthetics, the comfort, the speed that I require in my vehicle. So that's the idea. So as we move up the chain and say, okay, for apparel, we need to offer the same pieces. That's when consumers will really come on board. But you've got to do it from a value standpoint, from a quality standpoint, from a price standpoint. There's just a lot of things to knock down. So I do think consumers will come quickly once they understand. But right now, as a startup doing this, you're competing with search terms, where brands like Shein may be saying, hey, we're sustainable. They're not in the least bit sustainable, but it doesn't matter. You've got, things like Skims that are coming up, more domestically from a US standpoint, but coming global, that's, has a 0 rating from a workers' conditions and a sustainability, but they just do a partnership with Nike because they want to get, themselves into shapewear or whatever. I don't even know why they do these things, but these are things that I think the consumer is going to be more aware of going forward, and they need to be able to look for brands with solutions like ours in a more readily available standpoint. So I do believe they'll come, but we just haven't been able to scale the audience to the level of our liking yet. But stay tuned.
Yeah, for sure. Stay tuned. And I think what people don't realize is something what I learned in the documentary Buy Now is that no one's really accounted for the end cycle of what we use, like where the stuff goes, and all of this shit or stuff contributes to climate change, which we've just completely, underestimated. It's just crazy. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just really.
our there's not 5 companies I can name. There's not 2 companies I can name that actually take responsibility for their product when you're done using it. I mean, where is it going? Where is it going? And I think that's the big aha, right? So why do they keep putting it on us? Like, you have to be a better recycler, and you have to now do these things differently, and you have to live a greener life. No. You have to do it. You have to plan for your product to be, because right now it's crazy. We subsidize a lot of these companies with our tax money. We give them resources, whether it be water, heat, whatever, to perform them, to make their products, and then they put their products in the world, and these products become objects of destruction, at the end of their life, versus going back to 0 and giving the world a chance to build new things out of by being regenerative. And I think that's where I really struggle with. We just don't have the policy or the wherewithals or the plan to say, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we make every company that makes any product plan for its end of life? And that's what Unless is trying really to pioneer is we plan for end of life. Whether you put it in your backyard or you send it back to us, we'll make sure it goes harmlessly away.
Yeah, and there's no challenge of planned obsolescence, which drives as well, which is why you're always buying stuff all the time.
And that's what Buy Now really unveiled. It's like, hey, planned obsolescence of the phone or the earbuds or whatever the things we use. It's like, it's real. I mean, I'm trying to hang on to my phone. I think I have a Apple phone 11 or something, and it's just like, it gets slower and slower, and the battery gets less and less.
I'm surprised you still have that. Wow.
I'm determined to hold on to it as long as I
Yes.
can. But it's like, it's definitely, I can feel the clock ticking on when I need a new one because they've decided I've used it long enough. And now what do I do with it? I guess I throw it away and hope for the best. It's like,
Well said.
this is not.
One can only hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the guys who met Pali of the Oceans who came into the office, what would you
Yeah.
be doing right now?
Well, probably blindly continuing on my journey of being a corporate executive at Adidas. I think, listen, partly for the Oceans with Cyril Gooch and then, by extension, Sylvia Earle, and Paul Watson. These guys are legends in the space of, basically ocean protection. But then when you start to learn the impact you have on those things, it's like you can't, and you go down that rabbit hole, you can't unhear that. You can't unsee that. And like I said earlier, you can only whisper yourself to sleep so often before you decide to do something about it. And so at the end of 2019, I was like, all right, I've done what I can here at Adidas, and I need to move on now and do something more
Purposeful, right?
with more permission, but also, with more freedom to really spend all of my time trying to solve for this problem. And I'm happy to say that's what I'm spending all my time doing now, is solving for this problem of harmful waste to end of life within fashion, and hopefully to driving a inflection point in the industry that changes it so that we can move from petroleum-based products to plant-based products.
I gotta say, what I find incredibly inspiring about you, amongst many other things, of course, is the fact that you're very detached. Like, having this fancy-ass lifestyle, traveling the world like you do, and just having those positions, like stuff that is done. Now I'm on a mission to be more meaningful in life, and it's very, very cool. Like, it's not for everyone at all. People can't make these choices, especially at the latter half of their lives.
Yeah.
Because they're attached to a way of living, right? Like, the perks
Sure.
and everything else that comes with it. So I'm very, very inspired by that.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I come from a privileged place.
Yeah.
I was a 26-year veteran of Adidas. I had some success, so I was well compensated. So I don't mean to, sound like cavalier about it. I'm not making great sacrifices, but
Sure.
I've decided to, to try to make the change I want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's, not just for me, but for my children and my children's children and my children's children. I mean, I think you have to try to, as I said in the film, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned type of thing, and like you get into the how can I fix this stuff, and how can I fix some of the things I've done or participate in, and how can I leave the place better than I found it. So
And that could be so much more fulfilling as opposed to what we usually think about what drives fulfillment in life. That's the
well,
leadership lesson.
that's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, I mean, I believe in a purpose-driven life. I think without purpose, what do we have? I mean, transactions are great, and they do have to pay the bills, but ultimately we live for community, we live for friends, we live for family,
True.
we live for our world, and we should all be active participants in making it a better place.
Yeah. I heard you mention one of your talks that you've learned far more in 4 years of your business than you did in decades of Adidas. Like, please tell us more about that.
Yeah, I just think like when you're at a big company, you have a lot of things taken care of for you. You have a finance partner, you have an HR partner, you have legal partners, you have IT partners, you have
Outsourced,
a lot
yeah.
of partners that are doing a lot of things to make your life easier so you can focus on your singular mission, which is to do whatever your job is. When you're in a startup world, it's like, oh no, you have no partners. It is
Jack of
like
all trades.
you're doing everything now, and you're finding the building you're going to sit in. You are paying the rent. You are negotiating the rent. You have
God.
to go buy the printer. You have to set up. Do you have Wi-Fi? If Wi-Fi goes down, it's your fault. Like you have to set up your systems from a product line management standpoint. You have to make sure you have proper legal protection from an IP standpoint, from a trademark standpoint, from a contract standpoint with different partners. You have to make sure your factories are healthy and good. You do
It doesn't
everything.
end.
And it's fantastic, but it's a lot. And so I'm a firm believer, having been through that, that entrepreneurs are born, they're not created. And so as I was a corporate executive for many years, I'm glad I have the entrepreneurial experience, and I'm glad I had a successful exit with an acquisition by Under Armour, but I would never do it again. It's like I know that my skill
That's
set is
interesting.
like driving bigger companies with support mechanisms in place. It's been a tremendous learning experience, and I've learned a lot about myself. Most importantly,
What would be your top 3 lessons that you've learned about yourself, that you discovered about yourself?
that's a good question.
If you
I
want to share, of
think
course.
no, no. I think I'm not a. I think entrepreneurs by nature have to be just extroverted, and they have to be willing to sell, you know, all the time. You're always on, you're always selling. And I know a few of these individuals. And Kevin Plank is one of those individuals who founded Under Armour. I get to work closely with him, and he's an unbelievable entrepreneur. I was like, I look at him like, I thought I was extroverted. I'm not even. I'm an introvert sitting next to you. So I prefer to make, create, and do things. So I prefer to have my hands in the creation model, not necessarily in the sales model. And I think as a CEO of a startup, you have to always be selling all the time. And even as a CEO in general, whether it be to your investor community, whether it be to your commercial partners from a sales standpoint, distribution standpoint, you're always on, you're always selling. So you almost have this dopamine addiction, if you will. And I applaud that. I envy that, but I also know that's not me. So I know my lanes. I like to steer bigger teams. I like to be I like to drive visions through bigger companies that then can deploy that vision into action. Having a vision is one thing as a startup, but deploying that's all on you also. So it's one thing to have the vision for Unless. It's another thing to scale it through distribution and selling and going to trade shows and just hustling for every order. Those are two uniquely different skill sets. And
Sure.
as a CEO, founder of a small company, you have to have both. And so it's like it's one thing to have the vision, which I think I'm more adept at, but to go out there and hustle the sales each and every day to to find partners and distributors and consumers, that's hard. And I think the combination of two is very unique. And again, I prefer to drive the vision and make product against the vision, and then give it to somebody else to go hustle and sell it. So again, those are a couple off the top of my head of things that I've found out about myself that I'm smarter now than I was before.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. And you're obviously crushing it in life with all that you're doing. What's like the trying? What's like the biggest myth you've encountered about quote unquote sustainable fashion?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest myth is don't believe everything you read. I think there's no really good policies that are enforcing what is qualified as sustainable versus what is not. So everyone can say anything they want about themselves with very little guidance from a regulatory standpoint. Now, regulations were starting to get much better in certain states and in Europe. I'm not familiar with regulations in India and the Middle East in general. I apologize, in Asia, but it's I think from a regulatory standpoint, it's very loose. So anybody can really say anything about themselves, and therefore they can buy search terms on digital, and they can promote themselves as being exactly what you want to hear. But
No one to
in reality,
verify. Wow.
they're not. And so the trust factor is a huge thing. The fashion industry has tried to self-regulate, but nothing's been consistent, and there's a lot of bodies out there that are trying to do good work, and they are, but it's all optional to whether you subscribe as a company or not. And then the science is changing all the time. So I mean, one of the big things that there is third-party validation for is called science-based target initiatives, SBTI, and those are really dialed in on emissions. So if you're just looking at an emissions score, then you have to look at scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 of your emission score, and scope 3 is the hardest to measure because it's all about your factory base and how you're shipping product and things like that.
Right.
And so the biggest way to reduce your emissions is through what they call recycled polyester versus virgin polyester, which is great on the surface. But when you dig beneath that, you say, well, what about the microplastics? What about the chemicals? What about the nanoplastics? Oh, yeah, we're not considering any of that. So science-based target initiatives is really just emissions-based. So it grades you on one scale, but it doesn't grade you on the fact that you're ingesting a credit card worth of plastic a week into your body. And it doesn't grade you on the fact that product that's shedding fibers is probably more likely to come from recycled polyester. So they'll give you a great gold star for being recycled polyester, but they won't consider this whole area that Unless is tackling, which is the ingestion and the contamination of all of our waters, foods, and air from micro nanoplastics that are wreaking havoc in our bodies because it doesn't fit in their emissions box. So I have a problem with some of the standards we have because science-based target initiatives are up there saying, oh, the holy grail is emissions. I get that from a carbon sequestration standpoint and a carbon burn and a carbon footprint standpoint. But there's all sorts of other things we need to solve for. So, and that's where it's like, because
That's not the full picture, is it? That's not the full picture.
it's not the whole picture, and there's no whole picture out there. So I applaud the emissions efforts. I applaud the zero waste efforts. I think we just have to keep putting those things out there and being transparent with it. And I think right now we're lacking transparency because a lot of companies are greenwashing, unfortunately.
That's the sad part in all of this. But thanks to people like yourself making a real difference in the world. And if you had to give one piece of advice to young entrepreneurs looking to make an impact in the world, what would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Two things. I'd say, quoting a famous individual, everyone needs to create the change they want to see in the world. So, what is that change? How do you do that? What is it you play into? I basically say that mantra to myself every day because we all have to play our part, regardless of what it is. And there's so much that's needed out there. And then the other one is, don't let perfect get in the way of better. Too many people have an ideal state in their mind instead of just taking one step and then another step and then another step. And so they rule out taking steps because they have this ideal vision of perfection. And perfection doesn't really exist. I mean, there is no perfection. All you got to do is keep getting better every day. And so those two things I kind of use to motivate myself. I want to create the change I want to see in the world, and I have to remind myself that don't let perfect get in the way of better. And so those two pieces of advice I give to myself, and I give it to anybody that's listening.
I love that so much because perfection can truly be paralyzing. You just stay stuck forever. It just stagnates you, right? You get nowhere with just overthinking things about the perfect time, the perfect opportunity is just crazy. So, with all the incredible work you're doing, Eric, what would be a good sign to indicate that your mission has been achieved?
Within 5 years, I want to have 15% of the fashion industry based on plant mineral-based solutions.
Ooh.
So, I mean, that's an inflection point. It's a 3 trillion, arguably it's a 3 trillion size industry. So if we can get to, even 5, 10, 15%, then we know that we're cranking. And you only do that by creating, what I call objects of desire, which I talked about in the film a little
Yeah.
bit, but it's building great product with great story, with great distribution plans. And the story here is, save the world. So it's like, so if we have product that lives up to that, who doesn't want to buy into that? And especially if it meets all the quality benefits that we talked about previously. So I really think there's a way to really flip that switch. I think people will be more than open to it. And now with our partnership with Under Armour, it gives us a scale to reach a new market. So yeah, we're in America now. We're coming to Europe this year, and then we start rolling it out to Asia and the Middle East. So it's like we're very
exciting.
excited about how we draw this out.
Wow, that's a brilliant collaboration you guys are doing, honestly. Cool. So, how would you define or describe an epic being?
An epic being. I don't know. I've never heard that expression. Can you tell me more about that expression?
Because the podcast is becoming an epic being. What's the first thing your mind thinks of when you hear the word epic being? I just ask all my guests because it's related to the podcast theme.
Yeah, listen. I mean, epic being is it's clearly a I want to say a human that is leading a change, carrying a flag, creating a movement towards a better place. Whether
Which
it's
you're
for
doing,
yourself,
yes.
whether it's for yourself, your family, your community, or your world. It's like somebody that's carrying a flag and trying to create a change in the world that is leading that change, and whatever that is.
Well said. And here you are on the podcast. Amazing. And where would people?
Pleasure to be here. I apologize for not knowing the definition of epic being beforehand.
You made it. That's what it is. The whole point is about what you think of it. But where can people explore your world and support you and just find out about whatever you're doing?
I think the first thing is, check us out on unlesscollective.com. I think it's a great place to immerse yourself in what we're doing and understand it. And then the next thing is telling your friends. And if everybody listens, tells 10 people, that's going to be a massive change difference for us. If you want to be more personally connected, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram. You can find me quite easily there.
Are you active on both? That's pretty cool.
Active is a very
Questionable. Very questionable.
is a good word. I peruse it from time to time. I wouldn't say that I'm a big poster on either, but I like to spend my sometimes my weekends, a free hour here or there, I'll go on, but it's not something I run to every day.
Well, thanks so much for being here, Eric, for your time and just inspiring more awareness and conscious choices in people and just making this world a better place one day at a time. Really appreciate your effort, your work, and just your presence.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and it's been a pleasure to talk, and I appreciate all the great dialogue. So thanks for having me, and thanks for helping spread the word.